I saw you probably last in early 2020 or late 2019, I think.
Yep. So, well, let's talk about that. So the book, which we see right here, is called For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. Why did you become a Democrat in the first place?
Yes.
And why the decision to leave it behind?
I was 21 years old in Hawaii, thinking about how I could best serve my community. I was very motivated by a desire to protect our home. Hawaii is a beautiful place, and grew up surfing and hiking, and protecting our environment was something, and remains something, I'm very passionate about. And as I went to go, I said, hey, why don't I run for the state legislature and actually be in a position where I could do something, actually solve problems, rather than stand on the outside carrying a sign and talking about it. Went and pulled the Office of Election paperwork and saw that I had to choose a party. And unlike some people, I didn't come from a family where it's like, okay, we're generation-long Democrats or generations-long Republicans. And so I really thought through, well, what actually makes sense for me? Mm-hmm. And at that time, this is obviously over 20 years ago, especially in Hawaii, the Democratic Party has had a legacy of being the party of working people. Being a welcoming, big tent party that really sincerely brought people together with different ideas, different views on different things, different religions, different backgrounds, and stood for free speech, stood for civil liberties, stood for these fundamental, truly American principles. And that's what drew me to the Democratic Party and why I joined the Democratic Party. Over these past 20 years, but I would say in a very fast fashion over these last several years, unfortunately, those in charge of the Democratic Party have taken it away from the traditional, what people call the traditional liberal party of JFK and the party of Martin Luther King, and it has become thoroughly unrecognizable today. And we can get into some of the reasons why I decided in late 2022 to leave the Democratic Party. You know, it really came about after doing my best as a Democrat in Congress for 8 years, as a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, as a candidate for president in the Democratic primary in 2020, to try to bring about that change that would take us back to the Democrat roots of being the party of the people. I became increasingly frustrated with the fact that those in power in Washington and the Democratic Party rejected that idea, rejected that effort that I was waging, but that others were waging as well, and instead continued down this path to where we see them today, where the Democratic Party is in Washington especially is a party of the elite. They are a party that is actively trying to censor free speech. When there are people who are saying things that they don't like, challenging their authority, asking questions they don't want asked, either directly or indirectly through big tech, we've seen increasingly more and more evidence showing that in the name of disinformation or misinformation or hate speech or offensive speech, unfortunately, the Democrat Party has become one saying, well, free speech is not absolute. And if we deem your speech to be offensive, then you shouldn't be allowed to speak in this country. Or if you say things that we don't think are factual, you shouldn't be allowed to say those things. This is one of many examples, unfortunately, of how the Democrat elite in Washington have not only strayed so far away from our rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, but are dangerously using their position of power, abusing their position of power to undermine those fundamental rights and freedoms. And for me, both as an American, as someone who's proudly served our country as a soldier for over 20 years in the Army Reserve, that's a huge problem, to put it lightly.